We enter into this time that we call worship, where we turn with intention to the things that are worthy of our attention, and we do this by lighting a chalice. The chalice lighting provided for this service is quite lengthy, but it uses a lot of we language, so I think we should read this intentionally together. So it's in the order of service, and let's just read it together. And then if my voice gives out, I can have a rest because you guys will be reading it. And online, you should have it as well because it was in the order of service. It is called We Come Together Without Creed by M. Maureen Killerhan. In this free church, we come together without creed, focusing instead on the core values of justice, equity, and compassion, of mutual acceptance in our diverse ways of being, as we seek to connect ourselves more fully with the unfolding truths of life and of our world. We come together in shared conviction that all people deserve a voice in matters that concern them, and that it is up to each of us to protect the rights of all, particularly those who, for whatever reason, have long been held in silence. We come together in the stubborn belief that community is possible and that peace is more than a dream. We commit together to affirm in our actions as well as our words the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. We come together in awareness of our interdependence, all humanity, and with the wider web of existence, for that too is part of what is meant by we. In this free church, we come together without creed, believing that the way we live in the world bears testament to the value of our beliefs. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope for who have gathered here today.
For all who have ever walked through our doors, for those who may yet find the spiritual home, and for
those whose paths will never come our way. For all this
and for all things, we dare to hope and dream. We kindle our
chalice flame today, this day. That is the longest chalice lighting I've ever seen. Our opening hymn is in the Teal Hymn Book, 1012, When I Am Frightened. You can stand if you want, or sit, or do whatever makes you feel most comfortable. And we'll give it our college best. When I am frightened, will you always assure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me Thank you. I think that's good. The service today is being shared among 16 congregations as part of a collaborative series of deeper dive services and workshops called Meaning Making in Liminal Times. Liminal, it means occupying space in between old and new. It also means being in the midst of a transition. Reverend Karen Fraser Gitlitz of Saskatoon Unitarians proposed this idea and the theme. In so many areas of life, it feels like humanity is on the edge of something new, which could be good and could be bad. We have decisions and choices to make that will shape the future of humanity. Given that, what can we draw from our Unitarian Universalist traditions that will help us through these borderline times and into a constructive future? Reverend Brian Keeley, today's speaker, is a retired and long-serving minister from Edmonton. His topic revolves around the loss of civility in public discourse. In the Gray Hymnal is a litany, number 637, a litany of atonement by Robert Eller Isaacs. And we will read this. This is a responsive reading where I read one thing and then all of you read the We Forgive Ourselves and Each Other. So it's number 637 in the Gray Hymnal. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time when we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For those and for so many other acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
We bring our hearts into this sacred space of community, and we open them up to each other, for each other, so that those of us who carry pain might be comforted by the presence of a loving community. So that those of us who are happy and well might share our joy and see it multiply in others. And to those of us who carry complex truths might find a welcoming space to process and make meaning of all that life brings. This, our communal well, holds all of our stories. It is the place we come to be held and loved. The water reminds us of our connection to each other, to all life, to the earth itself. So if you have a story, a joy, sorrow, or complex truth on your heart that needs to be spoken in community, we invite you to share. And we invite you to drop a stone into our well of community to mark your story and remind you that you are not alone. And I will remind people that they have to use the mic, which isn't on? No. Is it on now? Yeah. Okay. Because our people on Zoom, and I think there's a lot of people on Zoom today, Cannot hear. O'Brien, yes?
Yes, I have two joys. One of them is there's been very big changes in the lives of my children and grandchildren. One of them is that one of my grandchildren who's been having a lot of trouble in her family was evicted as of Friday morning, which was a big trauma. She and her 3 children and her husband. But the joy is that they found an alternate place that's actually better located and less expensive. And these are all in Tatamagouche. So that was a wonderful outcome through the efforts of a family friend. And the other big change is that my son has sold his house in Dartmouth, and they moved out on Thursday. And we're hoping that that'll be the beginning of a better life for all the family members.
I'll put in 2 stones.
Thank you.
I actually have 3 stones that I want to put in today. The first is for the children caught in war and violence, and I think primarily of the children in Gaza. But there are children in Israel. There are children in the Ukraine. There are always children. And the second is a stone of hope for all the people of all faiths and many political stripes coming together and saying enough is enough. And I hope that some of us can join tonight at 5 o'clock. And the third, because it's the day after Remembrance Day, is for is for Al Griffin, Murray Tatten, Herbie Macaulay, and Willis Loring, who collectively took part in many actions during World War II, and who survived to become my father and my beloved uncles, as well as for all their friends who did not, and to say on their behalf, because they're no longer here, that lest we forget also means no more. Sorry, I wrote it down because I thought it would make me get through it. Okay, I'm done. Sylvia is coming up. Do you want me to bring the mic to you, Sylvia? You want me to bring the mic to you, or? Sure, I'll come.
I'm noticing that Shripad is there with us, and for those of you who don't know, he fell not too long ago and has a fracture in his foot. So he saw the surgeon, and he now has to wear this boot that looks like is heavy and looks like a ski boot, and he has to wear it for 6 weeks. And I know he's planning his annual trip in mid-December. So, Shripad, all the best.
This Thursday, my mother-in-law and a young brother-in-law, he's 15 years old, they arrived here. Their sponsorship was made possible thanks to this community, and they're going to live with us. And when I say to people that they are living with us, they're saying that I must be so brave, which I don't know what they mean, but I guess I will find out soon. But here is to more happy wives, partners, and significant others. And we have a lot to do, and I promised her that I will come back home as soon as I thanked everybody here. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yay. And Margaret's coming up. Maybe she's going to say what I was going to say.
Yes, we have more good news for refugees arriving. Clement and Sylvie finally made it here at 3:15. No, it was 3:15 was when Marilyn got home. 1:30, I think, was when their plane finally arrived on Friday night in Halifax. From Toronto. They had been in Toronto for like 24 hours, and from that, previously they flew from Uganda, I believe. Yeah. So they are finally here, and hopefully one of these days they will come to our church.
Shripad?
Yes, just wanted to say that I'm doing okay now. It's not a fun feeling to be confined to home for such a long time. But Sylvia and Faith and Sheila Morrison and various other people are helping me in various ways. So thank you to them all and greetings to you.
We're glad to hear you're doing better, Shripad.
Thank you.
And I'll put one stone in for the things that we feel in our hearts that we don't speak of in public. Oh, this mic is still not on. Just a sec. Oh, okay. And I have a reading. It's called Counsels. It's by Marge Piercy. And I read this and it feels like me that they missed a sentence at the end. So if you're confused, I want to assure you it is not me and my copy paste skills. We must sit down and reason together. Perhaps we should sit in the dark. In the dark, we could utter our feelings. In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest. In the dark, we could not see who speaks, and only the words would say what they say. No one would speak more than twice. No one would speak less than once, thus saying what we feel and what we want, what we fear for ourselves and each other into the dark. And perhaps we could begin to listen. The women must learn to dare to speak. The men must learn to bother to listen. The women must learn to say, I think this is so. And the men must learn to stop dancing solos on the ceiling. After each speaks, he or she will say a ritual phrase. It is not I who speaks, but the wind. Wind blows through me. Long after me is the wind. Actually, that made better sense when I read it out loud. Okay. Our reflective hymn is 1008 in the Teal hymnal. Traditionally, in this space, we sit for this one, but as always, you should do what you feel comfortable doing. And Riley, when we finish singing, you can put on the sermon. And I'm going to sit there, but I'm not playing, okay? I just need to sit for a while. 1008. Which we probably know a little better, hopefully. Okay. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the psalm of each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, and we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices on each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, and our heart is in a holy place. Our heart is in a holy place.
Good morning. My name is Brian Kiley, and I'm a minister with Kelowna Unitarians. As a Unitarian for over 40 years, and a minister for 35 of those, I've always had an image that we are on the outside of the religious and social mainstream. In fact, as I look back at our record of standing up for the rights of LGBTQ2S people, for women's reproductive rights, for refugees, for climate justice, for truth and reconciliation, for the homeless, for multi-faith conversations, and other issues, I have sometimes imagined that we are on the cutting progressive edge of social change. After all, we have a great set of principles, including our seventh, regarding the respect for the interdependent web. Do you know that that was the first mainline religious statement that spoke to humans being fully a part of nature and not rulers over it? That was pretty advanced for 1986. Our principles speak about justice and equity and compassion, about essential fairness, about combating racism. It's still a pretty good list all these years later. And these principles were voted in a democratic fashion back when I was brand new in the church. And they encouraged me into and have guided me through my ministry. What I've always admired about the principles and sources is that they are respectful. The statement is not a creed that must be believed. Rather, it tries to lay out who we are as Unitarian Universalists, or perhaps more realistically, who we aspire to be. They offer no promises. They don't attack anyone else. They don't disrespect the beliefs of others. There's no taunting, no hatred, no arrogance, I hope, and no insult. We don't claim to have the truth or all the answers, either sacred or secular. In our sources, we explicitly state our respect for the wisdom of other religious views and faiths, even as we state strong support for humanism and the scientific method. There is, in the tone and the wording, a certain civility in our principles, an invitation for thoughtful reflection and for conversation. They are tools designed to help us formulate and refine our personal beliefs and values. Again, not a creed, but a set of guidelines to help us articulate our personal moral codes. What the statement is not is a big stick designed to beat us or anybody else. Now, because we have no stake in being the one true faith, we don't need to go to war with any other religion. Instead, what we ideally seek is an exchange of ideas to the end of expanding our knowledge, our spirituality, maybe finding common ground, maybe refining our own views and rethinking our positions. Now, I suspect that everyone who has taken the time to consider the principles has one that speaks to them a little bit more than the others. And the one that's guided me most consistently is the first: respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And given my preamble about the principles in general, this might not be a surprise. Now, I am not perfect at this respect thing. I am known to colorfully curse bad drivers from the privacy of my car, oh yes. And I confess to having some hard thoughts about this current Alberta Premier, but For the most part, I try to remember that essential respect. I try to train myself to follow it in little ways. I'm friendly to grocery store clerks, even when I'm having a bad day, or especially when they're having a bad day. When I'm dealing with a call center, I try to remember that whatever is irritating me is not the frontline person's fault. And when necessary to ask for the supervisor, I do it as politely as I can. It pains me to see signs near the cash of our local grocery store reminding customers that abuse of the staff will not be tolerated and they will not be served. Has society sunk so low that we have to be reminded to not abuse minimum wage cashiers? I am no saint, and I often fail, but I strive to be respectful of the inherent worth and dignity of others. In short, I try to be civil. And that's one reason I have been so deeply involved in Unitarianism. The principles speak to that core of civility, which is why I'm speaking on this topic today. So far, the 21st century seems to be defined by the death of civility, especially in the public forum. Philosophy professor Mark Kingwell speaks of the duty of civility. Civility means a great deal more than being nice to one another, he writes. It is the lubricant that keeps society running smoothly. So vital is it, in fact, that some philosophers say we have a duty to act civilly, especially here in Canada, where we must live with diversity. And he goes on to suggest that dictionaries often give civility short shrift, dismissing it as a thin veneer on civilization, one of the most disingenuous of the social graces. Now, to a certain extent, the dictionaries have it right. Civility is the hallmark of diplomacy, after all, which sometimes means polite speech between bitter enemies. But at least the civil speech lessens the chance of escalating the problem. Now, later in his article, which we will consider in our deeper dive in 2 weeks, he starts to define what he sees as a key aspect of civility. Quote, first and foremost, it is the one in which the mass of people subdue their selfish instincts in favor of the common well-being. Subdue their selfish instincts in favor of the common well-being. I'm starting to believe that if that aspect of civility exists in Canadian society, it is rapidly waning, eroding, lost in a massive personal interest, self-centeredness, and entitlement. I live in Edmonton. I am a cyclist. Now, Edmonton is a geographically spread out city where the car, or more rightly in Alberta, the pickup truck rules. When the city started to create downtown bike lanes 6 or 7 years ago, the hue and cry was deafening. Excuse me. How dare anyone waste my tax money and challenge the supremacy of my God-given right to drive anywhere I want? This week I've heard a talk radio discussion about $10 a day daycare, which is not yet available in Alberta. And inevitably, there were a few texts that came into the radio station with a message something like this. I don't have kids. Why should I pay for other people's kids? Have we lost the sense of the common good so completely? What concerns me is the narrowness of the vision who people think that way. Government should exist to meet my needs and everybody else can be okay. They don't see that we are all in this together, and that ignoring the real needs of one group may lead to our needs being ignored as well down the road. The democratic process is, or should be, about more than the one with the most votes winning. Democracy also has to be just and equitable. and compassionate. And oh my, did I just reference our second principle? Yes, I did. And our seventh principle speaks to the interconnectedness of all things. Can we not see the basic interconnectedness of human needs as well? As a society, the idea of being part of a society is evaporating right before our eyes, and I find that depressing. Sure, we have a ton of real issues facing us and limited resources with which to address them. And we have many good and valuable, if sometimes differing, interests and approaches to the betterment of our world. But increasingly, the voice of how will this affect me has become dominant. Once upon a time, most Canadians at least considered the we alongside the me. Not a homogeneous sense by any means, but often people thought of the collective, the common good. And it seems to me that more and more now think only in terms of the me. The ideas are fueled by the ability to find internet and media echo chambers where you only hear your ideas espoused and never hear any other viewpoint unless they're expressed in a demeaning and dismissive tone. And people who speak civilly, rationally, and quietly about the we are definitely them. Dismissed, denigrate, and often shouted down or spoken over. Working together with people whose views are different from ours is passé. Increasingly, the concept of compromise is passé. Actually making personal sacrifice for the common good is sadly often also passé. This is a familiar discussion around our house, and it usually winds up with my wife or I making the half-joking statement of, if Canadians in the 1940s all felt that way, we'd all be speaking German today. Hyperbole and oversimplification, of course, but with a degree of possibility. And the thing is, these opponents on any side of any question are mostly not bad people. Look at the fires across Canada this summer. Acts of kindness and generosity abounded, and no one was stopping to check political views before helping. But absent catastrophe, we are becoming increasingly polarized. Just talking civilly without anger or yelling or name-calling, just exploring both shared and differing views. The search for the common ground is getting hard to find, much less finding the common ground itself. Maybe what we need most is what Marge Piercy said in our reading. We must sit down and reason together. Perhaps we should sit in the dark. In the dark, we could utter our feelings. In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest. In the dark, we would not see who speaks, and only the words would say what they say. No one would speak more than twice. And of course, the default mode she refers to is listening to what's actually being said. I don't know, friends. I'm 68. Maybe my ideas are old and out of date. Certainly, my children like to ask me what it was like when dinosaurs walked the earth. Maybe this is the dawning of the war of the words. Political leaders around the world, and especially in the United States, seem to want things their way only. And we don't have to look any farther than the congressional speaker debacle or the Trump trials to see that the idea of the common good has well and truly disappeared from the American political scene. And sadly, that twisted pattern is gaining traction in this country as well. It breaks my heart. I am old enough to remember a parliament marked by fierce debate, yes, but a parliament with a basic civility and a recognition that a good policy has no political party. I remember a US Congress where a bit of horse trading, compromises on bills where both sides got some of what they wanted. That's long gone. Can we not just talk? Perhaps we have to look back some wisdom coming from those $10 a day daycare classrooms. For there they teach the basic skills of civil communication, according to Judy Chambers of Penn State University. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every voice will be respected. We will take turns. We will not interrupt or speak over others. And adapting some extra bits from the adult world, she adds, we will refrain from shouting or cursing. We will only discuss the past when we agree it is relevant to our discussion. And we will talk about issues, not personalities. It's funny, I guess, me wanting to return to a time of politics dimly remembered and maybe partly invented. I want to go back to ways of the past more than this present-day succession of endless tirades. My goodness, I think that technically makes this liberal Unitarian minister a conservative, because conservatives tend to want to go back to ways of the past. Yoicks! Maybe I've got to turn in my union card. But I do believe, in my heart of hearts, that finding ways to just talk to each other and to really listen to each other over time will lead us to better outcomes, better cooperation, and a gentler and healthier society for all. So let us think about how to set aside our bulwark differences for a time and just learn to talk and listen civilly. Thank you.
So I messed up in the order of service and I put the offertory before the included meditation. But I really hate it when people jump around in the order of service when they make mistakes. So I'm going to do the offertory now. Because when you're the service leader, you get to decide these things for anybody that ever wants to volunteer to do it. It's a feeling of power. Community is made possible by the offering of our individual skills, commitments, and gifts. And the truth is that we need each other and money to survive. Yet nobody's worth and dignity is in any way measured by the amount of money that they have or don't have to give. So during the offering, we invite you to offer. Pam, can you wait for a sec? Just because there's not a lot of people in the room. Just offer if you can. And today, any undesignated money in our collection bowls will go to the work of this community. We've been asking for a while for extra donations for the roof campaign, since we don't want to deplete our building reserve fund too much. And just this week, our building reserve fund will be called upon even more. Some of you may have noticed when you came in this morning that the glass window in the outside entry door has been vandalized. Somebody etched a series of words and numbers. I Googled them. I have no idea what they mean. This happened on Friday. It won't be cheap to replace. I haven't called a glazier, but in my head, it's going to be at least $1,000. It may not be worth putting through insurance because $1,000 may actually be a deductible, but we haven't contacted insurance yet. If you want to give money to the roof, please put it in an envelope and mark roof, or comment this in your e-transfer. And it is so easy to do an e-transfer. treasurer@uuch.ca. No password, it just gets deposited directly into our bank account. And if the comment section says roof, we will count it towards the roof. and leave our poor building reserve fund alone to pay for those kinds of things, so. Thanks. Now, sorry, Pam sorry, I asked her to not do it, and then I'm in my head thinking Jessica's playing music, because she was supposed to play a lot of instrumental music today as part of the service. So Riley's gonna whistle. I don't know. I'm not gonna sing. If anybody knows what the words mean on the outside that somebody etched in, please, a lot of you are a lot smarter than Google, but it doesn't seem to be hate or gang related by anything I could find online. But we can't leave it there. Thanks, Pam. Our meditation is called Language by Jacob Trapp. And following the written meditation, we will enter into a period of shared silence until I ring the bowl. If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence. To pray is to listen to the revelations of nature, to the meaning of events. To listen to music is to listen also to silence, and to find the stillness deepened and enriched. Our closing hymn is number 6 in the gray hymnal. Please stand as you are willing and able. I don't know this one too well. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I make my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did I will extinguish the chalice after the following words. The chalice is extinguished, but its flame lives on in the hearts and minds in each one of you. Carry it with you when you leave this place and share it with those you know, with those you love, and most especially with those you have yet to meet. So that's the end of the service. But, sorry, Glenda, what? Oh, yeah. Can we sing that? Sure. Glenda says we should sing the closing. We didn't do the opening one. I forgot about it. Yeah, sure. Sure. We'll do that. I'll step away from the mic again. We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. And my prayer for you is a peace that's true until we meet again. So, today we are supposed to have a special meeting, and I don't know how many people are on Zoom today, Riley?
We have
9. Yeah, I know we need 15. I'm not all that comfortable doing this with so few people, even if we would barely make quorum. I know there are people out of town. There are people, anyway, and there were quite a few people that